It's 2 weeks after recovering from a 39.5-degree fever. I stayed home from work for almost a week. I recently moved into a new apartment. I don't even own a bed yet, so I'm sleeping on a 3-inch thick foam mat. After all the stress of moving, I decided to relax by munching on 2 bags of potato chips, ketchup, and all dressed flavored. I ate most of both bags, then went to sleep. Then suddenly it's 2 a.m. and pain has woken me up from sleep. I sat up out of sleep, and even that slight movement rippled pain throughout my chest. Laying down only makes it worse, so sleep is not gonna happen. I decided to wait a bit to see if the pain would go away on its own, but it didn't. Panic is slowly creeping in. Is it heart problems? But I'm young and, despite my potato chip addiction, not unhealthy. But what if it's heart problem? I need to go to the emergency room, just in case. But the thought of calling an ambulance is terrifying. What if I call them and it ends up being nothing but a waste of their time? So, too nervous to call an ambulance, I text my friend for a ride instead. It was still embarrassing, but less so than the alternative. Why didn't I get an Uber or a taxi, you may ask? Well, I don't know. It was after 2 a.m. I was panicking, so I wasn't thinking straight. My friend and her boyfriend picked me up and drove me to the hospital. Thank you, 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 thank you. Gratitude, 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 gratitude. We arrived at the hospital and got in the lineup to talk to a nurse. It was after 2 a.m., so it only took 5 minutes to get through. The nurse asked me some questions. I told her everything I knew, which wasn't much. Her to bend and to move and to breathe and to live, and she checked my vitals, listened to my breathing from the front and back, checked my blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, and so on. She scheduled me to talk to a doctor, and I got in almost immediately. Again, it was after 2 a.m. I left my friends in the waiting area. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The doctor sat me in a bed, made me take my shirt off, and put some cold goop on my chest. Then he rubbed a machine on top. It was an ultrasound, specifically an echocardiogram. Basically, it's similar to how a healthcare provider looks at babies in the bellies of pregnant people. Just instead of a baby, we're looking at my heart instead. The doctor didn't find anything wrong. I even asked him a silly question about if my ribs had collapsed. They didn't. He walked away briefly to check on something else. And then I just sat there with my thoughts, waiting in a hospital bed, and to my horror and relief both, the pain slowly disappeared, only for embarrassment to take its place. The entire reason I didn't want to call an ambulance was because I worried the pain was going to be nothing, and that's what it turned into. The doctor came back and the pain was gone, so that was it. I was just sitting there, a perfectly fine, healthy person. They dismissed me. None of us knew what had happened, but there was no problem with my heart, and I was doing fine now. So my friends dropped my embarrassed self off at my apartment, and we all got some sleep. I even went to work the next day, but I was so embarrassed about nothing being wrong with me that, well, I didn't tell anyone. After a couple days, I slowly realized what had happened. Remember earlier on I mentioned I relaxed by eating potato chips? Well, they'd given me heartburn. I'd called my friends at 2 in the morning. They drove me to the hospital. I saw a nurse, a doctor, then got discharged because I'd eaten too many potato chips. Here, in my defense, I'd never gotten heartburn before. I didn't know what it felt like. All I knew was that my chest hurt and breathing was pain at 2 in the morning. At the time of this event, I ate potato chips, like 1 or 2 bags a week, and I'd never had a reaction like this before, so I didn't know what it was. Maybe this means I'm getting old. Anyways, I didn't learn my lesson. I continued eating potato chips at a consistent rate following the event, but it didn't happen again. I was perfectly fine and healthy, and whatever had caused the bad potato chip event didn't happen again. On to my second hospital visit. This is nearly 2 years later, and instead of that 3-inch thick foam mat, I had a real bed, like a regular person. I woke up in it at 4 in the morning. My chest hurt. Moving was pain. My lungs were on fire, and death seemed welcoming and... Okay, listen. I know this sounds familiar, because it is familiar. I ate too many potato chips again. It happened twice. I loved them, and they hurt me. I had a bit of a problem. In my defense, I'd only ever gotten heartburn twice in my life, and this was 2 years after the first time, so... This time, it felt significantly worse. I've never felt pain like what I did from when I ate too many potato chips. It was, and I'm not exaggerating, as if my lungs were on fire. Every breath was a short gasp. I couldn't walk except while hunched over. There was a massive sense of pain throughout my entire chest. I thought the first time was bad, but this second time was immensely worse. But this time, I had knowledge. I knew what was going on. It was just heartburn, so if I wait it out, it'll go away on its own, right? night, I canceled the plans I had with my sister and her kids that day, and I waited, just waited. Eventually, 6 hours had passed. The pain was still just as strong as ever. I talked to my sister via text message about what I should do, and well, we agreed I should get some help. I was going to go to a nearby walk-in clinic this time, but it was the weekend. They were closed, so I went to the hospital again because of potato chips. Why am I like this? I couldn't bring myself to ask for a ride this time, so I walked there instead. The embarrassment and shame was a little too much for me to handle at the time, and now I'm telling the internet about it. I probably need to be nicer to myself, but a little bit of self-deprecating humor never hurt anyone. The hospital wasn't very far away, so it wasn't too bad. I was just in pain the entire time, could barely breathe, couldn't stand up straight, and couldn't move very fast. I was fine. When I arrived, it was similar to last time, but I needed to wear a mask because of the bad sick. I waited in a lineup that took 30 minutes this time, and then eventually got to talk to a nurse. I told her everything, no filter. Hello, ma'am, nice to meet you. My name's Gaen. I ate too many potato chips, and now my chest hurts, and breathing is painful. But I guess you can see I'm talking just fine, so I'm probably okay, but it really hurts. The same thing happened 2 years ago, and it really hurts. But if you just want to send me home to wait it out, I'll do just that. I'll do whatever you say. Tell me to go home, I'm gone. Tell me to take medicine, I'll take medicine. Just please make it feel better, or tell me it will stop. Please. To top it all off, the icing on the cake, the thing that makes it even more embarrassing, is that the nurse was cute. It's not her fault, but, you know, it did make me feel a little bit more self-conscious. I actually wanted her to send me home. If someone professional just told me to wait it out and that it would be okay, then I would follow that advice to the end. All I knew was that the world was pain, difficulty breathing, and pain because of potato chips. She was really nice and advised me to do what I thought was best, but she did say I'd come to the hospital for a reason. She was right, so I stayed. I asked her if the phrase potato chips was going into the file. She chuckled and said yes. So that's a thing that exists. After being inputted into the system, I ended up waiting 3 or 4 hours before I could see the doctor. I was there so long they had to put me through the system twice. The pain had lessened a little bit, but not by much. When I finally saw a doctor, they gave me an electrocardiogram just in case. That's essentially a test that shows the pattern of electrical signals on your heart. Mine was fine. My patterns were pretty good and normal. They had to stick electrodes on me. That was kind of neat. Since everything was fine with my heart, the doctor gave me a small paper cup filled with a pink liquid my sister called a pink lady. I forget what was in it, but when I drank it, my entire tongue and throat went numb. I waited for several minutes as sensations slowly returned, but it didn't really work. The pain was still there. The doctor and I both shrugged. He agreed that it was probably just heartburn, so he sent me home to wait it out. It got marginally better with time, but the pain didn't fully go away for nearly 3 days afterwards. I survived. Embarrassed, but okay. You want to know what I'm not embarrassed about? Free healthcare. Sorry, Americans. That hospital visit was just last year. I was so scarred about the amount of pain and discomfort that I finally kicked my potato chip habit. I've only bought chips for myself like 2 or 3 times since it happened, and when I do eat them, I stagger them out and I don't eat before bed. I still crave them occasionally. Most of the time, all I have to do to not want them is remember the pain. I know it's actually my fault for not using self-control. The potato chips would be fine if eaten in moderation. Still, not eating them at all is probably better in the long term. I've since replaced them with homemade popcorn, so I guess this has a happy ending.